What's up, family? Welcome to CreelTalk, a place where two people living out loud share insights, failures, small wins, and everything in between. Listen, no fancy studio, no professional sound bites, no AI perfected scripts. It's just us growing. Whether you're going through breakthroughs or breakdowns at the same time as we are, pop in those earbuds and let's grow together. Believe. Are you happy? That's a tough question, right? Happiness is such an intriguing concept. I mean, what is happiness? Even Wikipedia has a hard time defining it. Check out what it says. Happiness is a complex and multifaceted emotion that encompasses a range of positive feelings from contentment to intense joy. It is often associated with positive life experiences such as achieving goals, spending time with loved ones, or engaging in enjoyable activities. However, happiness can also arise from spontaneously without any apparent external cause. It's a heck of a definition, right? Here's how I would simply define it. Happiness is a positive feeling based on emotions and this sense of self worth. In other words, it's to live a moment in joy. I believe everyone has the potential to control their happiness. This feeling of happiness is it's really most determined by our goals. Predominantly, the goals that revolve around our relationships with other people. We all have one of two goals with our relationships. One, approval and validation, or two, positive impact and contribution. Now, for those who seek approval and validation from their relationships, these are the people that are mostly unhappy. Here are some characteristics I've experienced with these people. First off, these people make gaining approval from others their main goal in the relationship and spend a lot of time unconsciously not knowing what they are actually seeking is that approval and validation. They suffer from a condition I would call AAD, approval addiction disorder. It just becomes what they seek constantly in all of their relationships. They don't seek this approval to find happiness, by the way. They find happiness in the approval because it validates how they want others to see them. In other words, people find extremely temporary happiness in the fact that they are understood and seen the way they want to be understood and seen. Here's the problem with that, guys. With this, even when this person gets approval, they sacrifice freedom and creativity and personal passion to meet what they think are other people's expectations. Think about this. Do you know that even compliments and criticisms are both technically judgments from another person? Aren't they? Labeling whatever you did as bad enough or criticism as good enough to praise it based on the other person's measuring tool for your actions, isn't that pretty much what a judgment is? Which means if your goal is approval from others, you would have to completely give up on your own thoughts in order to live up to these persons' expectations. The worst part is the goal of seeking approval and validation is actually impossible. As hard as you try, you're not in control of how other people think or feel. There are people out there that they're going to dislike you no matter how good you are or how hard you try. Not to mention, no one person will always 100% of the time agree with how you live and make decisions, which then alone makes this whole pursuit of attaining other people's validation and approval and just not a reachable goal. Yet it doesn't stop there, guys. I spend a lot of time studying human psychology and how people think and why they do what they do. And what I've learned from some of these studies is that people don't keep trying for something they feel is impossible or they can't reach. Belief has a shelf life. Instead, an unhappy person will cut off others whom they feel they cannot please and eventually stop doing things altogether, simply living a life of going through the motions for fear of not being able to meet other expectations. Simply put, it's easier to disappear in the crowd and anonymity of the world than it is to be judged for being different and radical. These unhappy people, they can even get to a point where they sabotage the good relationships they have. This happens because unhappy people view others through a lens of competition. They almost have to like like get the validation of anybody around the person in their relationship with them, and that validation itself is a moving target. It's other people who, in fact, move the target by getting more approval and validation than them for something. For example, think about this. One person may land a career where they make $100,000. They get congratulations, they get compliments, they get approval and validation. And then maybe a close friend of theirs lands a career where they make $150,000. They get more compliments, they get more attention, they get more validation, and now this causes the unhappy person to start to build up resentment, jealousy. They play the comparison game. Instead of actually being happy for others who do well, they start to resent them. They start to look to outdo them. The sabotage gets even worse when the people around the unhappy person doesn't meet their expectation in return. For example, if an unhappy person gives a friend a well thought out gift for their birthday, they often will expect the friend to do the same in return. And if the friend doesn't, the resentment builds up. They may even put pressure on that friend to return the favor, showing that they only gave that friend the gift in the first place because they wanted a gift and approval for them in return. We call that attention seeking. You picking up what I'm putting down. You see kind of some of the signs. I go over all of that because those are the signs of somebody who may be operating in a position where they're not in control of their happiness. In essence, making the goal of your relationships to get approval and validation from the other person is how you can take your happiness and imprison it in the opinions of other people. And expecting others to earn our approval and seek our validation is exactly how we can sabotage our relationships, ultimately creating an unhappy life. Now, I hear you. Some of y'all may be saying right now, Creel, that sounds all well and good, great philosophical viewpoint, but it is impossible not to seek approval and validation in the world we live in today. We're all surrounded by social media, marketing. We're pressured by the idea of exceptionalism where we have to always be the best at whatever given craft. And if we're not the best, then what was the point of doing it? There's just pressures in the world that constantly make us care what other people think. Heck, most people won't even try out a restaurant or go see a movie until they solicit the opinions of other people, whether in person or online, to determine if they should. I hear you on that argument, and I do politely disagree. Since when did thinking for yourself and having your own life experiences, making a ton of mistakes along the way, by the way, become worse than other people controlling the narrative of your life, making your decisions through seeking their validation? There's a man. His name is Larry Hoon. And Larry Hoon, follow me on this story, he spent upwards of 3.5, maybe even 4 decades in the public school system as a physical education, and a health teacher, as well as a wrestling coach. And Larry Hoon, in the beginning of his career, he did extremely well. He won awards for coaching. He won a state title in a public school, I believe the last public school to win a state title in wrestling, and was a phenomenal educator. But, he chose to stay in the public school he started at. Although I'm sure based on his accolades and based on his achievements, he could have chased fame, he could have chased popularity, he could have chased maybe even a higher paycheck had he moved on maybe to coaching in college or even coaching in the Olympics, but he didn't, which I'm sure a lot of people probably gave him the opinion that he should, but here's why he didn't. He didn't because Coach Hoon did not live a life where he was seeking the approval or validation of others. Instead, here's what he did. He lived a life where he was seeking to add value and have a positive impact, a positive contribution on other people, which is why he stayed in that public school system. Because here's what Coach Hoon said. Coach Hoon said, I make a bigger difference in the world by staying here in my community and at the crossroads of where young adults go from children to adults. I can have the biggest impact on their life, instilling lessons, mindset, positivity, and just letting them know somebody believes in them. Coach Hoon retired the year after I graduated from high school and was my wrestling coach. For me and probably thousands of other people, he spent that 3.5 to 4 decades using the education platform he had created, as well as the credibility he developed through his accolades to have a direct impact on so many people, changing so many lives. I got to attend Coach Hoon's retirement ceremony as well as when he got inducted into the Hall of Fame for coaching. And the amount of people, not just even the students, but the teachers, the coworkers, the co-coaches, the people who were even rival schools, they had so much great things to say about the impact that Coach Larry Hoon had on their lives, which was his goal in the first place. By living a life of impact and contribution without caring what other people think, Coach Larry Hoon was able to live a life with purpose. And I would be willing to bet my net worth that Coach Hoon was in control of his happiness for him and his family. Guys, the goal of happy people in their relationships with others is to positively impact them and be useful, have a contribution to that person's life. In doing so, happy people, they're okay with being disliked, misunderstood, not always approved, as long as they believe who they are and what they do is making a difference in other people's lives. Unless someone is unbothered by other people's judgments and is unafraid of being disliked, really is okay not always being recognized for the accomplishments, the breakthroughs, the achievements. Their happiness will forever live in the self-created prison of other people's opinions, ultimately making being happy out of their control. But when we are focused on contribution and adding value to other people's lives, the approval, it's no longer necessary, especially when we reflect to determine what contribution looks like for us and have the awareness to determine when that contribution is taking place. Now, you may then think what I'm saying is that happy people are simply those who are selfless, but you'd be wrong. Happy people, just like unhappy people and all people in the history of ever, for that matter, are selfish by nature. Their goal is the exact same. They are pursuing their own happiness. That is what we do as human beings. We pursue what makes us happy. We look to avoid what makes us unhappy. Here's the difference. Happy people put attaining that happiness in a place that they can actually get it. What they do is they gain joy from their contributions to other people in the world instead of from the approval of other people in the world. I would even argue, I'm jumping out on a limb here, that the desire to help other people because it makes you happy is a much stronger motivator and a much more consistent inspiration than just because it's the right thing to do. There's a lot of things in a daily basis that we all know is the right thing to do, yet why don't we do them every day? It's because they don't all make us happy. Remember, as human beings, we unconsciously move towards what makes us happy, and we unconsciously run from, avoid what makes us unhappy. Therefore, if your goal is to be happy, You get there by adding value to someone else. I want to make a case that simply being alive should make you happy because in most cases, your very presence adds value to someone else's life. As a mom, just showing up today adds value to your kids. As a husband, just being available adds value to your wife. As a friend, just caring adds value to your friends. To the world, you may just be one person, but to one person, you are the world. And you don't need to perform any actions to be that person for them. That is my belief. I believe all people have value, even if they haven't done anything good or beneficial yet. Because of this, I naturally accept myself as valuable as well. And everything I do is rooted in adding more value to other people without needing anyone's approval or validation, just like my hero, Coach Hoon, and the countless thousands of heroes that all live the same way. Family, it's time to stop living for validation and approval in your relationships. Let's seek to simply add value to your loved ones and anyone that is blessed to know you. By doing that, here's what we're going to do. We're going to spring your happiness free from the prison of other people's opinions. Believe.